Good evening, everyone. Just testing my audio and video. Welcome, everybody, to the regular council meeting for Wednesday, April the 26th. Welcome to staff and members of council and those who are participating from the public and all of those on live stream, like myself, that are zooming in. So I wanted to first of all ask if everybody would please ensure that their cell phone is turned off while they're participating, and make sure that you are muted if you are not speaking. And public comments will be audio and video recorded and shall form part of the record, which will be retained by the town's retention bylaw. So I would ask at this time if I could ask Councillor Constantine, please, to deliver the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that this land is the traditional territories of the first people of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe people of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewa of Rama First Nation, and Chippewa of Georgina First Nation. And we thank them for generosity, for generation of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you, Councillor Constantine. As you can tell, I am not in the council chambers this evening. I'm in beautiful Brant County at the Small Urban Municipal Conference. And given that it is much more difficult, I don't have the peripheral vision to see whose hands are up. I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Fowler if he'll please act as chair for this meeting. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. We now are going into open forum. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Toma, we do not have anybody registered for open forum at this time.
That is correct. No one has signed up on the sheet. There may be persons in the chamber who may wish to speak, though.
If anybody wishes to speak on any of the items on the agenda tonight, now is your time. Feel free to come up and speak. Okay, thank you. So we are going now into the approval of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ices and Councillor Richardson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Do we have any disclosures of interest tonight on any of the items on the agenda? Seeing none. Ms. Tillman, we have no presentations or petitions, correct? Fair enough. But we do have a delegation from our Capital Projects Manager, Meredith Goodwin. Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. This is regarding the Land and Lakes Plan, correct? Okay.
Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Fowler, Member of Council, staff, and public, for giving us the opportunity to present to you on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan Update and Lake Simcoe Enjoyment Strategy and Trails Master Plan Update, also known as the Land and Lake Plan. I'm Meredith Goodwin, Capital Project Manager from the Engineering Department, and presenting with me today is Chris Trevison, Operations Manager of Community Spaces, Parks and Community Spaces, Tammy Botham, Sports and Recreation Manager, and Michael Tucker, Partner for Think for the Land and Lake. He's the Land and Lake Plan Consultant, so he'll be here to assist us with any questions that we might have. Do I need to turn it on, Kim? It's buzzing.
Our apologies, we are going to have to progress the slides for you. We did do testing
knew
immediately
it worked
before,
this
but
afternoon.
best laid plans.
The virtual public presentation was launched on April 11th, and all project subscribers, community groups, user groups, and developers were sent the link. If you can. Click again. The link to the virtual presentation and draft plan can be found on the project page and in the document section on the right side of the page. Great, thank you. To create a strong multi-year master plan that benefits the community, a thorough understanding of the current plans in place was critical. This ensures that each plan works well with the final goal of creating a successfully updated master plan. We would love to thank Council for attending all the PICs to date, and the community engagement phase of the master plan project involved internal and external stakeholder interviews, community meetings, and surveys to gather feedback and insights from the community. This phase was critical in ensuring the master plan reflects the community's priorities and needs, and all public open houses were recorded and are also on the project page. The Land and Lake Plan and Trails Master Plan is divided into 5 sections. Section 1, Project Background, provides information on the framework and study context. Section 2, Parks and Recreation, provides information on programs and events, outdoor scheduled facilities, as well as parks. Section 3, Trails, provides information on the scope of trails assessment, existing conditions, and recommendations. Section 4 is the Lake Enjoyment Strategy, which provides information on the waterfront-wide principles, lakeside parks, and municipal marine facilities. And the final section, Section 5, is the Master Plan Implementation, forecasting considerations, recommendations, projects, the Lake Access Strategy, and Master Plan updates. So project background. Next slide. Key considerations that compromise the framework of the Land and Lake Plan and Trails Master Plan update are supporting a healthy and active community with safe and welcoming parks in Innisfil, robust supply of recreation opportunities to be ready to grow our recreation services, and equitable access to the lake. So Innisfil has many kilometers of coastline, but the vast majority are privately owned. The town recognizes that the lake is for everyone and that it's possible to balance uses such that residents who do not own lakefront property can still enjoy the lake. And collaboration. The town has strong relationships with key partners in recreation and is interested in continuing and expanding those collaborations. Next slide, thank you. The project approach is comprised of 4 overarching phases: background review, community engagement, needs assessment and recommendations, and the draft and final master plan. So Innisfil is expected to grow to 84,570 residents by 2051. This growth is fueled by developments such as Orbit and other developments within Innisfil. It is projected that as the population ages and grows over time, the proportion of the population aged 75 plus will continue to increase as the age demographic below will decline. These changes will lead to specific choices in providing recreation opportunities. Next slide, thank you. The Parks and Recreation section of the plan is organized into 3 parts: programs and events, which identifies program and event needs and provides directions on key resources and procedures to ensure recommended services can be delivered. Outdoor scheduled facilities assesses the need for additions and improvements to facility supply and directions for the provision. Parks includes assessment of existing parks, future parks, park distribution, and parkland needs. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tammy to discuss the programming recommendations.
Thank you, Meredith. The program's events is further divided into 5 categories: programs and delivery, arts, culture, and heritage, outdoor programming and activities, sports development, and age-specific program needs. The program delivery assessment is divided into 5 focused areas: supporting the expanded role of sport and recreation, joint service planning, marketing, communication, and funding, accessibility and inclusion, measuring success. The Sport and Recreation Department has expanded its services beyond the recreation program, the traditional recreation program, to include a diverse portfolio of activities, such as sport, visual art, health, mental health opportunities, as well as supporting our local high schools through their leadership class, youth training programs, events, and partnership with other community organizations. With strong resident interest reported for visual arts and events, Innisfil is prioritizing the development of arts, culture, and heritage in our community. The town is taking recommended action, such as providing supportive outdoor event space and dedicated staff to advance the Innisfil Culture Master Plan and Campus Plan. Innisfil residents are highly interested in outdoor programs and activities. Making improvements to outdoor programming is a high priority. Natural assets, activities that use the lake, trails, forests, such as kayaking, skating, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, provide numerous physical and mental health benefits to the community and especially our youth. The residents' survey shows a high interest in ice programs, but natural outdoor rinks can be unpredictable due to weather. An outdoor rink with cooling system and roof would be ideal and could be designed for year-round activities with including seating, lighting, washrooms. The town could provide introductory programs for various sports fields and community events, such as races or family activities, encourage physical activities and our facility uses. The plan recommends hiring a sports development coordinator to implement our sports-related recommendations. To increase programming, the plan is recommending the development of non-sport programs, providing more indoor and outdoor locations, expanding field sports and social clubs, pursuing youth-friendly programs, and piloting more adult fitness classes during the day, and considering options for developing an indoor space that can accommodate sport and fitness, and expanding our programming for 55+. The Town of Innisfil's Parks and Recreation Master Plan update highlights the evaluation of outdoor scheduled facilities not currently available in Innisfil. The plan discussed the potential of strengthening tennis facilities, the increased community interest in pickleball courts, and by providing dedicated facilities. Additionally, the plan proposes the redevelopment of sand volleyball courts and the demand for baseball diamonds, which will require our baseball diamonds at the IRC and Innisfil Beach Park to be relocated. The new outdoor sports complex is recommended to accommodate this anticipated growth. I'm going to now hand it to Chris to discuss parks.
Thank you, Tammy. So Innisfil needs a park plan that considers improving access, health and safety, and the environment, and Innisfil's growing and diverse population. The plan covers the town's existing inland parks, lakeside parks, and future parks. So the assessment of Innisfil's parks is organized into 5 topics. The first one being park classification, which includes neighborhood parks, community, removal of parkette as a category, separating regional and special use, and adding conservation in lakeside parks. Second is parkland distribution. Third is parkland needs. Fourth, park facilities. And last is park activation and placemaking. Next slide, please. The plan considers the distribution of parks to help ensure residents in both existing and future neighborhoods that will have easy access to parks and recreational amenities. However, some neighborhoods such as Sandy Cove, Stroud, Churchill, Fennel's Corners, and Guilford will require more parks to support their community in the future, requiring that the town concentrates their efforts to better serve these communities with new parks. Currently, Innisfil has 4 hectares of parkland per 1,000 residents, which exceeds the target of 3.5 hectares. However, this is due to the surplus of regional parks like Centennial Park, which has not been fully developed for public use. Therefore, this plan recommends the future addition of more neighborhood parks. As the population of Innisfil grows, approximately 150 hectares of the additional parkland will be needed by 2051 to meet the future needs. It is very important to have amenities to fit the town's growing population and increase the self-directed use of these parks. The plan identifies potential locations for additional facilities in current and future parks like sports fields, tennis and pickleball courts, playgrounds, basketball courts, skate parks, splash pads, outdoor rinks, and dog parks, while looking at adding new facilities like cricket, lawn bowling, disc golf, and of course many more. Next slide, please. The plan recommends improvements for existing parks in Innisfil, including inland and lakeside parks. The recommended improvements have been grouped into 3 categories, which are minor, moderate, and major, all depending on how much investment will be required. The plan also identifies 42 future parks, including neighborhood, community and district, regional parks, as well as open space parcels that could become future parkland. So I'll pass over to Meredith to discuss trails.
The Town of Innisfil aims to improve and expand its trail network, integrating new trails into parks, neighborhoods, and linking settlement areas when possible. Sorry, next slide. It's a long-term endeavor that prioritizes connectivity, safety, accessibility, multimodal options, and cost-effectiveness, among other guiding principles. It includes recommendations for trail hierarchy and identifies 6 types of trail infrastructure, including multi-use, secondary, sidewalks, paved shoulders, sharrows, dedicated cycle lanes. The plan recommends 5 regional connections and over 111 kilometers of new trails across 58 segments. Urban communities will primarily see secondary trails, sidewalks, and dedicated cycle lanes, while regional connections will include paved shoulders and multi-use trails. And I'll pass it back again to Chris to discuss the lake enjoyment strategy.
Thank you, Meredith. So as we know, Lake Simcoe is a key asset of Innisfil. It provides opportunities for waterfront recreational activities and supports a thriving fishing community all year round, particularly during the winter months. The Lake Simcoe enjoyment strategy aims to improve public access to the lake and enhances its use and enjoyment for our residents. The park plan focuses on key issues such as parking, protecting and enhancing the natural environment, flooding, winter access, privacy, and resident and visitor use. Innisfil Lakeside Parks have been divided up into 3 categories. First being neighborhood, so these are typically smaller and provide waterfront access to our local community. A great example of that would be our Big Bay Point Lakeside Park. Second being community, which are typically larger and support a larger town-wide area. They typically offer better access to the water, but parking still may be limited. So another example of that would be our 9th Line Lakeside Park. Third and last is regional. So currently Innisfil Beach Park is the only regional lakeside park that we have, which has its own master plan that council will be reviewing at a later date. The categorization is based on size, topography, potential for parking, and site amenities for each of these parks. The recommended improvements for each lakeside park are primarily focused on enhancing access and environmental considerations, with specific improvements associated with beaches, lighting, parking, seating, accessibility, as well as the privacy. With that, I'll pass it back to Meredith.
So implementation. So the implementation section of the master plan highlights the proposed rollout of all 165 recommendations and 191 associated projects with budget constraints, spanning over the 30 years of the plan. The recommendations in the plan have been organized based on priority level and categorized into short-term, medium-term, long-term, and ongoing. Recommended estimates are currently being reviewed and will be included in the final plan once all comments and questions have been received. The rollout of the implementation plan will be done through incorporating recommendations into future budgets based on several factors, including priority schedule, dependencies and efficiencies, and staff resources. And also the costs will be incorporated into the DC background study. So next steps. So the draft plan, this big guy right here, and presentation is on the project webpage, which will be open for public comment up to May 12th, 2023. So staff and Think will then finalize all the comments, and final master plan will be sent to council for review. The final report for council is scheduled for August 9th, 2023. So thank you. And if there's any questions, we will take them now.
Thank you, Meredith, Tammy, and Chris. Appreciate it. Any questions from council? Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess as a ward that has more rural areas in it, I see the trail master plan shows those trails going through what at this point is private property. I'm wondering how you balance, private property rights with, the town's need to have those spaces to get exercise and get outside, because sometimes we see conflicts with that. And so how do you plan for that when you know that there are these conflicts?
Yeah, so of course, it is just like that. It is a plan. So we have to address looking at the long term and how we would love to achieve those connections in our trail system. So some of which are on private property. So we would look at how we can address that and how we would purchase those properties in the future. And if it's not a possibility, it's not a possibility. But we want to show it how we would ideally like to see the trail systems. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Councilor Waters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to say thank you very much, because I think from the small map that showed all the trails that I've been advocating a pathway from No Frills area all the way down to the 25th. So I think I saw that in there. So I thank you very much for putting that in there as a planned green path trail, because I'd love to be able to say that you can walk from the 20th down to the lakefront at some point in time. So I'm glad to see that, and I just want to congratulate you on listening to us. So thank you.
We're listening.
Councillor Drudge.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, can you define open space to me a little bit better and what
Sure.
those would be used for?
Yes, so through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Drudge. The town actually owns a lot of open space property, environmentally protected, that sort of thing. And so we're looking at how we can develop certain ones, maybe for more of a trail system in those, that sort of thing. So still keeping that environmental protection, but while looking at those opportunities, while some spaces may not be environmentally protected, there might be an opportunity to build another park there. So we've been looking at all of those like spaces throughout the town and how we can address those as well.
Okay, so you said open space could potentially be park.
Could be in certain circumstances, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
just to clarify things.
yeah.
Anybody else? Any comments, questions, concerns? All right. That being said, I need a mover and a seconder that the presentation regarding the Land and Lakes Plan be received. Councillor Zanella, Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? All opposed? Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go to County Council, Municipal Associations, Conservation Authority, and Committees. If anybody has anything they wish to share, now will be the time. Okay. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. We had our library ward meeting last Monday. What was really great was we went through the CEO report, and it was great to see some of the great initiatives and things that the library's been doing. English Conversation Circle they've been doing a lot of outreach with the YMCA and the Silver Club, and relocating. They're really looking at how to make things more user-friendly for our youth and teens, and rearranging the way that things are being situated, their collections. So that was really great to hear about at the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, I believe Mayor Dolan wishes to speak.
Thank you very much. Yes, I just wanted to update on the Simcoe County Council meeting that happened on Tuesday. We're fortunate enough to get quite a bump in our homelessness prevention funding that was announced in the last provincial budget, and the county gave a presentation, the staff gave a presentation to how that homelessness funding is going to be spent. I also would like to say that we had a the Association of Municipalities of Ontario has revamped some of their task forces. The Land Use Planning and Resource Task Force is one that's encompassing all of the land use planning, all of the energy, plus all of the aggregate. And of course, you know, there's nothing happening in planning right now, so it's not like we're busy or anything. But I'm happy to share that Karen Redmond, the chair of Waterloo Region, and myself are co-chairing that, and we had our first meeting on Friday. Dealing with both the new Class EA of changes that are going to be made, along with the newest bill, Bill 97. And finally, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where I am right now, which is at the Ontario Small Urban Municipal Conference, which was supposed to happen here in this time of year in 2020. So we're finally back in person again. Minister Clark is here now. He might have left by now. I don't know. I had left him in the conference room, but he's come here to speak to us. We're also having all three parties, the Green Party, the Liberal Party, and the NDP, Merit Stiles, are going to be here. We've got a number of presentations, all to do with small urban group. So many that are very interesting for us. One of them is downtown revitalization. There's one on short-term accommodations. And for us, I'm very proud to say that we're taking the lead on the presentation tomorrow on traffic calming strategy, and Carolina and David are here from the town of Innisfil to present our new traffic calming strategy to about 150, 170 delegates from across Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay, to add to Mayor Dolan's points from county, yesterday we had a delegation from Simcoe Hospital Alliance. There was a lot of discussion regarding integration versus amalgamation and the benefits of it. And the idea rested with the specialized care designated for each region by need. So it's better to work in unison than to be all under one umbrella. The population growth could potentially outgrow the ability to provide hospital care in 10 years, so this is something we have to be aware of. And another reason I'm very grateful we're having a new hospital built in Innisfil. They were looking at alternative levels of care to cycle people through the hospital in a more efficient fashion to get them the more proper care at a lesser cost to the tax dollar. Mayor Dolan pointed out to County Council that for all the issues that arise when people point to us, just remember that 9 cents out of every dollar of tax dollars that are collected from everybody only come to the municipality, so the majority share goes to the province and the federal level. We had a sustainable operation energy report and climate action planning overview. This one will make Councillor Waters smile. The county's reduced the energy use intensity by 824 tons by 2015. They're working with a sustainable solutions group to see what options are coming up in the future. And the reduction of the greenhouse gases by Simcoe County has been decreased by 40 to 45% since 2005, and they're going for a goal of net zero by 2050. On top of the homeless system review and recommendations that Mayor Dolan she spoke of, there's also they're looking to undertake new outreach to Indigenous partners to enhance their participation in the planning and analysis. So it's something they're taking very seriously. They're reaching out to see what they can do to have them help themselves, so that we don't tell them what they need, they tell us what we need, and then we assist them with the process. And the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has increased the has given to County of Simcoe Homelessness Prevention Program an increase of $9.1 million to help tackle the issue. And lastly, as this is on everyone's mind and under everyone's tires, I can confer with our CAO that we have been in contact with the county regarding Innisfil Beach Road, and talks are underway to help rectify the situation in the most timely manner possible. So we now have multiple levels of government, and the communication is clearly open and going back and forth. That being said, all right, we're going to move into the consent list. All right, so I'm going to read out the list as we go. And then if anybody wants something pulled or has any specific questions, feel free to speak up. We're going to go to A1, special council minutes dated April 12th. A2, the council minutes from April 12th. All right, the summary report of the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, that's B1. The Joint Interim Fire Governance Advisory Committee meeting, that's B2. B3, the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting. B4, the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. Oh, yes, Mayor Dolan?
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, I didn't get my card up soon enough. I just wanted to make a comment on B3 that if anybody hasn't put in their top 3 priorities to Ms. Bowman's email address, to make sure that you do that as quickly as possible.
Thank you. All right, C1, the Community Benefits Charge Strategy and Bylaw. Councillor Ices?
I refer that to committee.
Thank you. C2, the ICE allocation policy update. Oh, Councillor Ices?
I'll refer that one as well.
The C3, repeal and replace the speed limit and community safety zone bylaws. Okay. C4, the final tax levy bylaw. C5, the zoning bylaw amendment application for 1417 6th line. Councillor Drudge?
I'd like to refer that to the committee.
C6, zoning bylaw amendment application for 2125 Rayner Court. Councillor Waters?
I'd like to refer that, please.
C7, the Broccolini site alteration exemption request. Councillor Waters?
We just like to ask a staff question. Concerning that property development, they talked about bringing in a lot of fill to level that property out. My question is, are they planning on removing the topsoil and then reusing it later on, or are they planning on burying it under all the existing fill? And so just want to know what they're planning on doing with that.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Waters. The topsoil nothing will be removed from the site. They will only be importing the fill that they need. And no, the topsoil will not be buried under any of the buildings. It should be stockpiled on the site and then reused once all of the grading is complete. And staff will be reviewing the documents and drawings to that effect.
Just a bit of clarification. I understand usually under buildings, it's normally removed, but if they're going to be putting acres under fill, so what I'm asking is, will that topsoil, which is existing where that fill is going to go, will that be pushed aside, then to be placed over top of that new fill?
Yes, it would be pushed aside because that would not be suitable for the foundations, the topsoil material, because of the organics within the soil.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, staff reports. D1, building permits issued in first quarter 2023. D2, integrated sustainability master plan update. Councillor Waters?
I would like to refer that one, please.
Staff report D3, the giant rocking horse update. All right, Councillor Drudge?
I'd like to refer that to the committee of the whole.
Okay, correspondence for action. Municipality significant event designation for Innisfil's Onion Fest. Hopefully I pronounce this right. EOM Entertainment municipally significant event designation for Gussapalooza. Correspondence for information, G1, the Innisfil Library Board. Proclamation for Mental Health Week, G2, a proclamation for Mental Health Week, May 1st to 7th. G3, the World Maternal Health Day on May 4th. Okay, G4, the proclamation for Building Safety Month for May 2023. Another proclamation, G5, Children's Mental Health Week, May 1st to 7th. Okay, that being it, we need to move into Committee of the Whole. So I need a mover and a seconder for that, please, and thank you. Oh, yeah, Councillor Constantine and Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, so the first item, I believe, was C1. Councillor Ices, do you have a seconder?
Thank you. If we could go, just go back to the consent resolved Committee of the Whole. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do not currently have a seconder for that. Looking for one. Councillor Drudge, thank you. So the reason I pulled it, we had the public meeting, I believe, last week, and there was some correspondence that we just received from some of the builders questioning some of the methods used for evaluation, and I wondered if they wanted staff to go back and address that. So I wonder if we could have staff maybe respond to that in the meeting if we feel that's appropriate, or whether we accept the correspondence to send it back to staff for them to come back to us on it. So that was my question for council.
Thoughts? Anyone? What do you think, Kevin, Councillor Ices? Yes, sir. Oh, Mayor Dolan?
Thank you. I believe I did see a response to the correspondence from Bill today from Mr. Binnings. And I think Mr. Binnings is on the call if you wanted him to address that.
Is that feasible, Ms. Toma? Okay. By all means, please speak up.
Yes, good evening, Council. Can everyone hear me? Very good, thank you. Yes, the second letter that we received from Bill, and there should be a response from Hempson to that. It's really two what I would call relatively minor issues that they raised in their second letter. It has to do with the issue we discussed last week, where we're proposing in the bylaw to have a per unit rate for the CBC, even though the default approach is to do a 4% of land value. And there's two issues that they've raised with respect to that. The first is we've set a rate that is based on land values today, and we've included in the bylaw a provision for indexing those rates to account for changes in costs. We don't really have a readily available index that measures land values, and because the CPC is largely a function of land values, ideally we would use something like that. Without having that, we've defaulted to using the same index that's used for the development charges and set out in the Development Charges Act. And it's an index that measures changes in construction costs, which does align with the nature of projects that we've included in the CBC strategy. And a couple of other points to that. One other municipality, the city of Pickering, that uses a per unit rate in their CBC bylaw, and it's not one of our clients, also has the same indexing provision. and as well other parkland dedication cash and lieu policies where they have a per unit rate also often use the DC index as a means of changing that unit price, even though the parkland is related to land values. So it's just a mechanism, and I think it's a reasonable one to account for changes in value, also recognizing that you need to refresh the strategy at a minimum every 5 years, and so we'll have the opportunity to review those unit costs. So that was their question number one. Question number two is they didn't like the consideration that we did is we said the default approach would be to use the per unit rates, but we included a provision that allows the municipality at their discretion to move forward and do on a site-specific basis a land valuation and apply the 4%. The reason that we proposed that in the bylaw is given this is a very new type of charge, and because we don't have significant amount of data around land values for these types of buildings specific to Innisfil, I wanted to allow the town to have the ability when they knew a property was unique, whether the land value might be higher or lower than what would support the per unit rates, you had the ability to utilize that mechanism. Recognizing as well, under the legislation itself, the landowner developer always has the opportunity to obtain a valuation and determine whether or not the charge offends the 4% cap. So our recommendation in the memo that we sent forward today is not to make any changes and to proceed forward as the bylaw is currently drafted.
Does this address your concerns, Councillor Ices, or do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that answer for sure.
Thank you. All right. Next one we're dealing with item is C2, ICE allocation policy. That is you again, Councillor Ices. Oh, sorry, yes.
If they could vote on this motion, that would...
Getting ahead of myself. I need a mover, or we have the mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm looking for a seconder for this one. Councillor Constantine, thank you. Yes, just in reviewing the policy changes, there's quite a thorough document, and I wonder if maybe staff could highlight just for the residents the biggest change in the policy that we're voting on.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Ices, yes, thank you for the opportunity. As stated in the policy, we did some just administration update. The major update in this policy is related to tournaments. So we were finding that we were getting a huge request for tournaments. We typically have about 26 weeks of ice time from October to March for our organizations. We have about 20 organizations that book, a large amount of our ice. We were getting more to the 10, 12 tournament requests, weekends, which was causing a lot of organizations difficulty in successfully running their weekend programming. And we were starting to find that some were even going outside to other municipalities, and our utilization rate has fallen on Saturdays and Sundays. So with that, we had met with all of our organizations, primarily with our local organizations first, and then went out to the broad group that does seasonal ice with us, and we're making the recommendation to maximize our 4-pad iced tournament weekends or events to 6 per season. That allows all of our organizations to have about 20 to 22 weeks of ice, which is a max utilization for them to run a perfect season. Now, in saying that and maximizing those 6 tournaments, we will be allowing any organization that wants to run a tournament on their own ice time. So if they have all day Saturday booked, and they then can pick up any open ice. So a lot of the tournaments start on Friday, so we'll see a huge utilization on our Friday ice time. Some are even starting on Thursdays now, and any other open ice time that's available will be able to be utilized. So although we're limiting the 4-pad tournaments, there's still opportunities for those organizations to run more than 3 or 4 tournaments, depending on how that works out. And then the cancellation policy, we were finding that our organizations were handing back full tournament ice in short periods of time. So our cancellation policy was quite strict compared to other municipalities. So we've reviewed that, we've spoke to our organizations, and we've come to a fair decision. So we've loosened our cancellation policy a little bit, and it was in our appendix, so we've moved it over to this policy so it can be tracked, when we do our annual updates on this policy. So I think those are the major areas.
Thank you, Ms. Botham. Just curious if this problem is unique to Innisfil, or in my mind it would be because we have such a beautiful facility in the IRC next door. And are there, I guess, opportunities that we might want to think about in the future?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Ices, yes. I do want to say yes, it is some of it to our beautiful recreation center. It is very central to Ontario, so we do get a lot of requests, even broomball nationals, provincials, Skate Canada events, so a lot love our facility, and because it is so central, we do get those requests, and we will continue to, address those requests as they come in. But we are unique in a way that because we had so many hamlets and we had 2 hockey leagues and 2 skating leagues within our hamlets, when we amalgamated into the town of Innisfil, those leagues did not amalgamate into one. So there is other municipalities, but very few municipalities that have a center like we have that has multiple minor hockey groups and multiple figure skating groups. So that does cause us an issue with the tournaments, because most municipalities has 1 minor hockey group and they max their tournaments out to 1 to 2 tournaments for those leagues. So we are a bit unique that way, and but we could keep addressing and working with all of our leagues.
Thank you.
All right, now the motion's on the floor. Need a vote on it? All in favor? All opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item C5, this was pulled by Councillor Drudge, the zoning bylaw amendment application for 1417 6th line.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is more of a comment. I still have a really big concern with the location, because it's nowhere near the primary project area that's projected for the orbit. I still have a really hard time trying to understand why it's so far away from the main settlement. I know we had another project similar to this one in Sleeping Lion, and that project ended up turning into a presentation center and then turned into a commercial space. So I just want to know, I know we put some time frame in for 3 years and then it can get re-extended by council's approval. I guess my question is, was that the same laws we had in place or rules we had in place for the original project that they had at Sleeping Lion?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Fowler, it is a similar process that they went through. So ultimately, what we're considering tonight is a temporary use bylaw for the 3 years. You've said, and you're right, that they can, after those 3 years, apply for an extension under the Planning Act, and at that point in time, we would consider that, and council would consider that if that was the case. But yes, it was a similar process to the past.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, did you add the approval through council as an addition to like a measure for us to control?
Through the chair, so that would be a requirement of the act that should they come for an extension, it would be council's decision to make, and that's described in the report. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how they did it. The Sleeping Lion project went through the same process, so that did come back to council to get approved to not be a presentation center and became a permanent structure.
On the previous application, I would have to just look at that to be sure of the facts, but I could take that back and provide that.
Okay.
If I may ask for a point of clarification, Mr. Carrera? The building that's being erected is not of a similar nature to the one that's in Sleeping Lion. The one I understand in Sleeping Lion is brick and mortar, like it's like it was a heavy-duty solid structure by comparison to something that is being built for Innis Village, which is meant to be easily broken down and removed at a later time. Am I correct with that assumption?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Fowler. So in terms of the process, what I would say is there is an agreement that they would need to work with our building department to enter into, which would include a security and the requirement that the building be temporary in nature. And prior to the issuance of any building permit, that agreement must be in place. And that would also speak to the temporary duration.
Thank you. There's no need to vote on this as it's just simply questions, correct?
No, we require a seconder, and then council would need to vote. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson seconding it. All those in favor? All right, opposed? Okay, then we're off to item C6, and that's Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconder, Councillor Richardson.
Councillor Richardson, okay?
Thank you. First of all, I want to just say a few comments. I'm glad to see that the owners of Home Hardware are here. I want to let them know that we want Home Hardware to be successful, and that over the years you have been very successful, because when Canadian Tire moved into the neighborhood, I thought that would be of serious economic consequences to you. So I was glad to see that you were able to pivot and come up with a very, very successful business profile that you currently have right now. So, and I want to say that I'm a strong user of Home Hardware. I think over the past 10 years, I spent close to $50,000 in the store. Staff know me well. And so even though I pulled this item, I still want Home Hardware to be successful, but I do have some questions for staff. So I just want to mention that up front. So my questions to staff have to do with how we're managing the aesthetics of the rezoning. So my first one has to do with, we did build a buffer into that, because this all came about because neighbors were concerned of the development that was going on the property, and were concerned about the impact it had visually on their properties. So my question is around the buffer. What type of buffer are we requesting, and how do we manage that in the future to make sure that it's a proper buffer for the neighbors behind Home Hardware?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Fowler, over to Councillor Waters. So when the initial application came in for the rezoning, there was no proposal for a buffer. However, there were concerns raised at the public meeting, and as part of the back and forth process to bring this report forward, the applicant did agree to a 1.5 meter buffer. And in terms of how that's regulated, generally speaking, it is meant for landscape. But what we really, as staff, wanted to ensure was that there was a distinct break in between where the storage ends and the fence or the property line of where the residential starts again. And so ultimately, through the site plan control process, we would evaluate what can be done with that buffer. However, with the changes with Bill 23, in terms of being very specific on a type of landscape or a type of tree, it's a little bit more difficult than it was in the past. But that is the right process, the site plan process, to have to evaluate the use of that.
Okay, so during site plan, we can request trees that are going to grow high enough that can create a buffer to help neighbors in terms of the visual impact.
So through the chair, we will strongly encourage the landscape. However, what we can't ask for is a specific landscape plan. And so from a zoning bylaw perspective, in terms of what's being considered tonight, what we clearly wanted as staff, what we've encouraged and what's part of what's being considered is the actual landscape strip itself. But it's hard to provide certainty as to the exact type of landscape that would be provided at this point in time.
All right, thank you. My second question has to do with the area that's being rezoned. The north side of that property has a house on it right now, and so I assume that the current owners, Home Hardware, own that. It's actually a quite nice looking house. My concern is over time, as home hardware becomes more successful, that provides an opportunity for them to increase their area which is under storage. Do they have to come back at some point in time if they did want to tear that house down and expand their storage?
Through the chair to Councillor Waters. So as of right now, the town staff are not aware of any intent to demolish, but they would be subject to a demolition permit process if that became their intent. In terms of the storage use, because it is site plan controlled, it would be very specific to where that is being approved based on the application before us today. If that was to be proposed in the future to expand, then they would need to come back and amend the site plan approval process or approval.
Thank you. And my third question has to be, if that expansion does happen, is access to the property. Is that, unfortunately, is that as a home hardware looks great from the front, but on the backside for Rayner residents, it's where they have the two large buildings right now, the two white ones, it's kind of nestled off to the side. So when you drive south on Rayner Drive, you do not see that very much. So it is nestled away, so it's not much of a visual impact. So my concern is future right now in terms of is if the house comes down, and will they be allowed? I know they already have access right now to that the existing site. Is that possible that that access could be increased and have increased traffic on Rayner Drive to the back part of the property in the future? And at some point in time, if they do the demolition, would there be a point in time which we can work with them to minimize the impact on the residents of Rayner Crescent, sorry.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. And so I would confirm that the entirety of that property is being rezoned through this application. Sorry, could I just get you to repeat the second part of that question?
In terms of, will we, right now, because there's a house there, is that, there's no access at that point, so access down the road, if that house does come down, will we have an opportunity to engage home hardware in terms of the use of that access point?
Through the chair, yes, so that in itself and the access would be subject to site plan control as well. And based on what's being proposed, there is no access based on what we have before us today, and it's actually fenced off along Rayner. Should they propose something in the future, we would evaluate that at that point in time. However, that would be through the site plan process. And I just want to remind council that that entire property, including the lands where the house is part of this application from a zoning perspective, but the applicant is required to come forward with that site plan application provided council approve it today.
Okay.
Actually, Ms. Lay has got her hand raised. She'd actually like to get a word in to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to follow up on Mr. Carrera's comments. So Councillor Waters, through that process of the site plan, we would ensure that the access to Rayner Court would have to be evaluated in the future and that they would have the appropriate commercial access from Rayner Court before they would use it for those purposes.
Thank you very much. And one last item is actually directed at the owners, is that I was by there today and I noticed that on the, you have a whole variety of storage units that back onto some of the properties which are east of where the property you own right now. And I noticed that there is a bunch of rental equipment on the top of that, which the neighbors behind you can see quite readily. And I would just ask that you consider your neighbors when you're doing. I realize you have tight constraints and you're trying to do the best you can with that. I would just be considerate of the neighbors, because if I own that house or you own that house, I'm not too sure you'd be wanting to look onto that equipment that's on top of those storage units. So I'm not going to hold this all up, but I just want to have good neighbors on both sides, and because I represent both, the businesses like yours and residents, I got to take a look at it both ways. So good luck with everything, but I just wanted to bring that all out in terms of concerns residents had. So thank you.
With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're up to item D2, Integrated Sustainability Master Plan. That is you, Councillor Waters, again.
We're there already? Oh, yes, right, okay.
Do you have a seconder?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Councillor Drudge.
Thank you. I thought I was going to get a break. I read the sustainability report, and I'm going to reiterate things I have said before. And I'm just trying to get my notes in front of me here in terms of, let me just pull this up here for a second. Okay, so first of all, in comments I've mentioned before, is that when we originally asked for sustainability master plan, strategic plan for Innisfil, we wanted it for all of Innisfil. And what we got back very quickly was not a plan for all of Innisfil, but for corporate Innisfil in terms of the corporation. And in there, it does state that this is a community-wide sustainability plan. Well, it's not a community-wide sustainability plan. It's a corporate plan. The corporate plan, in terms of the amount of emissions that the town emits, is a very, very small percentage of the community emissions. And so I know I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again, is that it would be really nice to be able to see that community plan come forward as part of this in terms of how are we going to address emissions around the entire community, because the major part is those residents who are living out there and future buildings. So we have the orbit, and we have new buildings coming in, which we can, substantially change how they're built. And so we have control over that. What we don't have control is over the existing buildings that are already there. So without a community plan, we have no idea how we can manage that. So it would be nice that if we had a corporate plan and a community plan running parallel with each other, because what I can see happening is that we'll do the corporate plan, that's going to take a year to finish that one off, and then by the time we get around to implementing, that's going to be 2 or 3 years by the time we're doing that, and then we'll get into the community plan, which means it puts those opportunities for savings carbon way down the road. So it would be nice to be able to be a little more aggressive in terms of making those strategies parallel and not linear, so we could get this done, because time is not on our side. Every year we wait, there are more and more reasons why climate change is going to happen faster and faster, and I think we should be doing our part. I think the survey, which was in that report, shows that about 80% of the respondents agree that we're on the right track or we want to be more progressive. So most definitely, the residents are well ahead of us. They would like to see something a little more aggressive on that. So I would encourage staff and senior leadership to think about that a little more. The other piece too is that we're really uniquely placed in that we own our own utilities, both water and electricity, and that we have a third mechanism called enterprise. And I know I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again, and you're going to hear it from me for the next 3 years. So I'm just going to mention that I think there's a unique opportunity to use enterprises to do some really unique things. And I think working together as a team in terms of in services, in power, and enterprises, that we can come up with some very, very unique programs. I sent a note to staff stating to senior staff about Ithaca, New York, which is a town of 22,000, so it's smaller than us, and they have much greater aggressive plans than we currently have. And I think a big part that's missing in this strategy is we have no targets. We don't say by 2030 we're going to have, in terms of corporation, we're not going to, corporately, we'll be carbon neutral. And then maybe 2035, because maybe we might take the community side seriously, that we'll be carbon neutral on that piece. So having targets or goals down the road basically allows you to work backwards and say, okay, if we're going to do something by 2030 corporately, then these are the hard targets we have to meet in between then, and then we can also set the budgets accordingly. So right now, our next 2-year budget is already set. So we have one coming up in 2024. That's how we do it. We set the budget according to how we work backwards from that goal. So it would be nice to see in that goal, that we're going to be carbon neutral. And then we have something, right now we seem to be plodding along. Staff are doing, at least I don't want to make this look like we're coming down on hard on staff because I think they're doing a great job. They're doing great at what they're doing, and we're a small community, and so I understand the pace at what we're working at. It's very methodical. It's well thought out. I just want it to be faster and more aggressive, and I think we can do that by setting proper goals to do that. So, I just want to challenge staff and senior leadership on that. I've mentioned the fact that because we have secondary plans for the orbit, we can move that sustainability agenda as that gets built out. But it's the existing community that I'm really quite concerned at. The point I mentioned about the survey residents are behind us. So we should be able to take this a little more seriously and try to move that agenda forward. And then last thing I wanted to mention is that I understand budgets are a thing that hold us back because we don't think we have the money. But I think so having some serious looking for proper funding from the federal government, I think it's there. And then if we can find that while we're defining what the community strategy is going to look like and what our goals are going to look like, that in year and a half when we have to come back and start looking at budgets for 24, 25, that we should have hopefully some funding in place that we can match and go to the community and say, this is what we'd like to do, and these are the associated costs with it, but these are the benefits behind doing it. So I want to state that I'm happy with the work that staff are doing. I just think it's too slow and not aggressive enough, and I think that staff need senior level support to move that forward, and any way I can help, I would be more than willing to do that. And in terms of looking for funding or just being part of a committee, there are residents out there who most definitely want to help. There's a group called ICAN, which stands for Innisfil Carbon Action Network. And they would love to build, and I think they have one of the main members, Will Stemmel, has sat down with Oliver. There are people out there who want to help us. So if we can draw on the community, is that one, we're getting their ideas, we're getting more support for our staff in order to move the agenda forward. So I would like Innisfil to be more aggressive in its goals and hence better programming. So that's what I have to say about our Sustainability Master Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Waters, for that very loquacious speech. All right, so when you can move this now, mover in a second. We have the mover and seconder. All in favor? Oh, so yes. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I too always appreciate Councillor Waters' passion for this topic. But I wonder if the report, which I think does a good job of sustainability master plan for us corporately, and I think maybe that was the direction the council gave at the time. So I'm wondering if Councillor Waters wants to maybe make a motion to further the discussion, because this is a big topic, right? When you're talking about having the whole of Innisfil having these targets, like, are you talking about industry? Are you talking about agriculture? Are you talking about traffic? Like, what do we mean when we say we want Innisfil as a community to have this plan? So I think there's enough questions that came out of your comments that if we want staff to work on this, that there may be some more direction needed from council.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. I appreciate your comments. I think when we originally passed this, we were expecting a community plan with a corporate plan. It was narrowed down, and I pointed that out to staff and was hoping that would change, but I don't think it did. And Oliver, if you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, I thought it was supposed to be a whole sustainability plan, but it was narrowed down, I think, in a bite-sized amount that you thought was more achievable. So I think it was originally planned to be bigger, but it got narrowed down just for reasons of, I think, of moving it forward. So I'll just ask Oliver if that was the case.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. You know, I think the way I would speak to this is to say this is a report, this is an information report for council on this project. I mean, it is a you know, it's a check-in on the work that's in progress. So I would say the feedback we're getting tonight is very helpful and is at a stage where we can still incorporate it into the plan. I mean, to Councillor Icey's point, you know, it is helpful to staff to have, if there is a consensus among council as a whole, to hear that, not just from one member of council, but if all of you believe, you know, that the direction of the project should change, it's helpful for us to have that direction from council as a whole. I mean, we have Naharka and Ms. Lee here on the call as well, who are more closely working on this project. They can speak a bit more directly to the scope question. So I guess, you know, procedurally, I think clerks can correct me. If council wants to give direction, it can. You know, I guess I am mindful of the fact that council can incorporate its sustainability goals in all of the planning work that we do, whether it's an orbit secondary plan, a transportation master plan. You know, and I think through some of those vehicles, that's the way for council to have an effect on that town as a whole, because I do think there's an issue around what can we control as a corporation? We can control ourselves. You know, we're less able to directly control the behavior of others. But Councillor Waters, I take your point, you know, that sustainability affects all of us. You know, climate change is a pretty universal issue. And your point about partnership is well taken as well. And, you know, conversations with those groups, you know, have occurred and will continue to occur. So, Deputy Mayor, you know, perhaps Ms. Lee or Ms. Naharka could add to what I've said, but hopefully that helps.
Before they do, Mayor Dolan had her card if she'd like to speak on the matter first.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so I too agree with the CAO. Councillor Waters, your passion for sustainability is always front and center, and thank you for leading our council in this matter. You know, but we have to walk before we can run. And I will say that we just got a sustainability update from the County of Simcoe. Was it yesterday or the day before? And it was similar. It had a more corporate structure. And I think that's the place to start, because I think that you can't go to people and say, you know, do what I say, not as I do. We have to do it and then, you know, prove that we are now we can talk to you because we're doing it. But that's all I will say, except to say that Ms. Bandaroo, it was a good update and I thank you so much. But my one question when I read it was, you talked about all of the different stakeholders and partners that you're working with, and I wondered if one of them was the County of Simcoe.
Through you, Chair, and thank you for all your comments, councillors and Mayor Dolan. So I'll just go with the last question first. We have involved all of when we first did our community engagement, we put out a larger call to all of our stakeholders and invited all of them to our focus groups. And we've stayed in touch with both the County of Simcoe as well as LSRCA, whether it was through the invitation to join our focus groups or through our regular municipal sustainability calls. So they have formal engagement platforms where we meet monthly and we provide updates to our reports. So we've invited them to participate, and we also are planning on a second round of larger and more formal engagement this year before we bring a final plan to council, and we're hoping to involve them more aggressively again at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Bandaroo. Ms. Lee, would you like to add anything to the conversation? All right, that being the case, yes, Councillor Waters.
I just want to address the second part of Councillor Zeis's question to me in terms of who are we targeting in terms of, is it industry, is it agriculture, is it residential? I am never one to dictate anyone how to do something. My personality is all about collaboration. So it's about working with people in the agricultural field, if in terms of how they want to proceed. What are they doing? Do they need help doing anything in terms of what they would like to see? Same with industry. I think the one where we have to be probably a little stronger is probably in the residential sector, because we don't know who our leaders are out there, but there is a group emerging called ICANN, and I'm hoping that they will be helpful in that sector. But when it comes to agricultural and industry, I am not an expert, and so I'm always about collaborating and finding out how they would like to move forward. If they have concerns themselves, how do we do that together as a community? It's not about, telling somebody else what to do. It's about, because there's always concerned people in the community, whether it's in the industry area, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in residential, is working with those people and finding out where we want to go together and coming up with a plan that's achievable and affordable. So I just want to put your concerns at rest that, I'm not about dictating a plan to anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. That being said, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Carried. And now we're on to item D3, the staff report for the giant rocking horse. That was pulled by Councillor Drudge.
I don't have a seconder.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you. I actually pulled this one for the chair.
Thank you, sir. When it came down to it, I read the report, and the one thing that stood out amongst this was that the location of the rocking horse is not an impediment to the widening of Innisfil Beach Road as the county moves forward. So we're being presented with a few options here, and I just want to get it out in the open so that everybody who passes by the rocking horse multiple times a day understands the situation. As I understand, because it is not being moved, there is not a priority to investigate too greatly as to whether we should demolish it or repair it. With conversations with Mr. Parkin earlier this day and Mr. Malinshan, it's my understanding that the tree farm has invited you to come take a look at the rocking horse. And we need to get an initial investigation underway as to what the damage is and what the repairs will be. If it is a health and safety issue, we don't want rocking horses falling on people's cars or people for that matter. I think it would be better that we get that report in a timely manner if possible and a cost allowance. We can judge then what the next steps are. As much as I love memorabilia, I believe, like we just, $100,000 would be a little too much for a giant rocking horse, and we can direct the funds to other things and other matters. The one thing I still would like to push in regards to this is once we get the cost allowance, I would like to have some community involvement in this. I would like, if possible, staff to reach out to the high schools, if there's somebody get volunteer hours. Is there a local business that wishes to help preserve this beautiful piece of woodwork? Before we say chop it down and remove it, see what options we have with the funding allowances we have. Is there a feasible way we can do this?
To you, Deputy Mayor, Chair. Yes, definitely. Thank you for the feedback. We really want to get in there once the ground is dried up, have a good look at it, get our engineering team in there to come up with some reasonable assessment of the costs, and then we will be able to come up with a path forward, and we will bring that back to council. Appreciate your input. Community engagement. If we think it's something we can feasibly do and cost-wise we think it makes sense, then we will definitely pursue that and bring that back to council next meeting or next few meetings once we get those engineering estimates in.
Thank you. All right. That being said, we got a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Okay. Carried. All right, and then we are going now to consent list recommendation, I believe it is. Sorry, my apologies. Rise recommendation, I need a mover and a seconder, please. For Councillor Drodge, Councillor Saunders, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, consideration to adopt recommendations from Committee of the Whole. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Constantine, Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? Carried. Now, no notice of motion, none received at this moment in time. And then I believe we are off to announcements. So we'll go, as Mayor Dolan does, by ward. If there anybody that wishes to speak up, Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just wanted to report on the day that we had at our farm a couple of weeks ago. The Simcoe County Federation of Agriculture hosted an agriculture equipment experience where staff members came out and got to look close at modern farm equipment. And we had a very good day, a lot of good questions. Staff was also allowed to drive some of the equipment, and we didn't have too many issues there, but it was a great day.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Councillor Constantine.
Thank you. This is an announcement for May 1st to the 7th. It's regarding the Tim Hortons Smile Cookies, and the proceed will be going to the Innisfil Food Bank. So we're asking everyone please to support it.
Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so I have a couple of things. So on Monday, we celebrated the retirement for Susan Bowles, who has been a staff member at the library for 33 years. So we wish her great luck and to enjoy her retirement. As well, coming up at the library this week, even tomorrow, they're having different community volunteer income tax programs, so you can register for that. Last week, the St. Francis of Assisi Choir participated in the Barrie Music Festival. Their grade 8 and their SFA choir both got a gold, which is amazing. Also next week at St. Francis, May 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, they will be putting on a performance of James and the Giant Peach at 6:30, so you can still get tickets. And lastly was the inaugural launch of the Innisfil Business Collective, which meets on the last Tuesday of the month at the Moon Cafe. Local business owners are welcome to join.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. I would just like to add one thing regarding Susan Bowes and her 33 years. I learned that she was the first paid employee in Cookstown at the library. And before that, it was all done by volunteers. So when they bundled the money together, they saved a little bit, and she was the first hire they had. And I think it was one of the most incredible hires, considering we've had 33 years of her guidance and leadership, and everybody spoke so highly of her. So we will miss her dearly. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just want to let people know that on Friday, last Friday of every month, is the euchre tournament at the local Lions Hall in Alcona. And this Friday, they'll be raising funds, which will be going to support the Sunnybray Public School playground. So those people who are interested in a really good game of euchre, that you attend on Friday night and donate your winnings to the fundraiser. Thank you.
Councillor Zanella.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So Simcoe Streams last weekend were planting trees. I think it was in Churchill. I was away for the weekend, so I know that you went, so I'm going to let you talk about that.
We planted 300 saplings along, it was third line. We stopped off at the property in the Innisfil Creek area. It was actually really incredible. My son and I, we dug right deep. There were lots of children, lots of adults, and then because the rain hit so severely the day before, 4 people showed up on the Saturday. So the town very graciously provided pizza for those who volunteered their time, and nobody was there to eat it. So the gentleman who owns the property was kind enough to put it aside. He put it in the oven and he reheated it, and he provided some of his own refreshments on the Sunday when we had a very, very large turnout. And for a couple of hours, it was just shovels and dirt everywhere. It was incredible. All right, Councillor Saunders? Okay. All right, and Councillor Drudge.
The Muslim Community Innisfil chapter invites everybody this Saturday, April 29th from 2 to 5. They're doing free barbecue, jumpy castle, fun for the whole family. And on May 6th in Cookstown, the Photographer House is having their ribbon cutting, and that's at 12:30.
Yes, the Eid Festival. Yes, that is correct. They're an Eid Festival. Yes, everyone has been invited. You just literally walk up and they'll feed you and give you something to do. It's really fun. All right. I don't see any Mayor Dolan here, so I will get. Do you have anything to add, Mayor Dolan? Okay.
I do. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank everybody for participating in all the Earth Day events that we had, and also the Volunteer Appreciation Week. That was very much appreciated. I want to remind everybody of the celebrity service at the Cove Cafe on Sunday to help support the Nantire band that Councillor Richardson was talking about. And I'm looking so forward to my James and the Giant Peach performance. I've seen 3 or 4 of their performances, and they're always outstanding. Those students work on them for months and months and months. And then I also want to say that I'm very excited that council members are starting a new strat planning session and reviewing our strat plan and looking big picture, stepping back and deciding, now that we've got our feet wet and we're into this term, where do we want to be by the end of this term? So that's an exciting project that I'm looking forward to. And finally, besides Ms. Bose, who will be missed deeply by myself and my family and all of the community, we also say farewell to Candace Wiggins. Candace is currently the business manager of Fire and Rescue. She's been with us for 12 years. And we really appreciate all the work that she's done, particularly over the last year or so on the GIFGAC group, the amalgamation group, and we wish her well in her future and her next opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lastly, I'll add a few points myself. Today, in our own chambers here, we now have a new Deputy Chief, Cheryl Sutton. She has been sworn in officially, and I cannot tell you how happy I am. She is a very, very integral part of the South Simcoe Police Force for decades now, and I think this is something like when we promoted Chief Van Dyke, that this is a very good decision on our part. We had a volunteer appreciation event this past week at Town Hall. Everybody who gives of themselves and asks for nothing in return but just to pass it forward, they put the positive energy into the town. They inspire so many of us in so many ways, because I mean, it's just absolutely incredible the amount of heart they bring to every event. We said thank you to them. Tomorrow night, we have at the Innisfil Community Church the South Simcoe Police Service Recognitions Awards. Considering everything that's happened over the past year, you can honestly say they deserve this night because they literally give everything they have and have paid more than they ever should have. So I invite everybody tomorrow night, if we can make it out. It's something that is truly, truly worth attending, to show these people that go out every day and keep us safe how much we appreciate them and all they do for the community. On a lighter note, we have at the Lions Hall this Saturday, I believe it is, our first spring market. It's an April spring market. We're having a ribbon cutting at 10 o'clock, I believe it is. It's something that we will be doing multiple times over the summer. It's a lot of opportunity to support our local vendors and people who work out of their homes and try to build their empires. And finally, we have the Innisfil Pride. They're putting together in the Grange Hall on the night, I think it's Saturday night, Saturday evening. Innisfil Pride is putting forward the pasta dinner. So you show up, you purchase, you can eat or you can take and leave, and all proceeds are going to TNR Feral Cats Rescue. That's an association that it's home-based. They catch stray cats, feral cats, they spay, they neuter, and release them back into the wild so that it helps control the population throughout Innisfil. And that is all I have in that regard. So we need now a confirming bylaw. So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Waters, Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment at 8:32. Councillor Drudge and Councillor Richardson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.